there, let's talk about zippers, because yes, I know they can feel a little bit intimidating at first. Many beginners see a zipper and think, that's too hard for me. But I promise you, it's not only doable, it can actually be fun. In this lesson, I'm going to guide you step by step through making a beautiful zippered pouch, your very own little bag with a zipper, using my start with a square method. That means no confusing patterns, no overwhelm, just simple squares, clear step-by-step instructions, and a really satisfying result. It's also a perfect way to use up your fabric scraps while learning a skill that will open the door to so many future projects. By the end, you won't just understand zippers, you'll feel confident using them. Let's turn that fear into a proud, I made this moment.
So I bought these really great Italian sort of lemon theme looking fabrics, and today we're going to make a zipper bag. So I'm just going to iron all these flat and then we'll start cutting the pieces. So I've got my fabrics lined up along the selvage edge. So the selvage is the end of the fabric on either side, where you see there are these little holes, which is where the fabric attaches to the machine when it's being made. So I've got a decent size selvage here, about of an inch. So when I cut these fabrics together, and they're about 5 or so here, I need to cut at least an inch off so that I don't get that selvage in my design. So I'm just going to cut that off. Okay, and then we start cutting our 2-inch squares. So 2 inches is 4 of these lines on the grid, so I'll just cut that. So I'll put these fabrics away. I love these fabrics, I honestly love them, they're just gorgeous. Sort of got that Italian or Spanish sort of feel about them with all the lemons. So I'll just neaten up the edges here. And then cut my 2-inch squares. So I've got my squares, I'm just going to take them to the layout table. So I have a piece of interfacing laid out on my layout table, and I'm just going to take my squares and we're going to do a design of 5 squares by 3 squares for this zipper bag. And I'm just going to start laying them out however they come out initially, and then I can play with the design once it's there. So just laying these out. So 5 squares by 3 squares. And there were some designs in the fabric that had squares on them already as part of the design, so I decided not to use those because I think they'd be better off for the lining. Because if they already have a square design on them, it's going to look a little bit funny trying to fit, you know, the lines of the squares into another square and then into another pattern like this, so I didn't use them. Okay, so now I have a layout of 5 by 3 squares, and I'm just going to play with this design until I like the look of it. So I'm going to take these two away from each other because they're a little bit too similar. That one up there, but then now I have these two which are very similar next to each other, so I might change that one for that one. but then they're close together. It's a bit of a game doing this. So I just need to get my scissors and trim around the edge. I've used a woven interfacing this time. It's fusible. So I've got the fusible side up, obviously. So we'll take that to the ironing board to stick down these pieces before we start sewing. So I'm just lining up my pieces a little bit more precisely now that we're going to iron them down. So getting those edges really close together, and that's why we use the roller cutter for these pieces, because you really need that super duper accuracy to get them lining up really nicely. So I'm just going to press lightly, and then I'm going to just trim that interfacing at the top so I don't get sticky stuff on the back of my iron. So that's nice and straight, and then I can go a bit harder with these and just press them like that, and then we do the next row. Now that they're basically stuck down, they're not going to move. I'm going to trim off this interfacing so again I don't get it on the back of my iron. Now I can really give that a really good press. So now we do the next one. So we've got the other side of our zipper pouch, and then we can start sewing. So I'm just going to thread up my sewing machine with a grey thread. This is colour 38 from Gutermann. A pale grey thread is the best thread to use when you're doing work that has multiple colours in it. It's the most forgiving against all different colour fabrics, and so that's why I'm using it today. So now I'm going to take the piece that I've prepared, and I'm going to stitch down these long lines here. When I fold it over, folds quite nicely, because we've lined all those pieces up with on our interfacing. I'm going to stitch a narrow hem of about 5mm or 1/4 inch. So do a back tack and then do the stitch. So we just keep going with that until we've done all of these lines, and then we'll take it to the iron and I'll show you the next step. So the next step is to take your sharp small scissors and snip along the edge of the fold on your seam, like so. Snip along right until the end, and do that for all your seams. So now we just take the pieces that we've prepared and iron the seams open. So we just iron our seams open like that, and now we go back to the sewing machine and stitch these vertical lines. So now we're just stitching down these vertical lines in exactly the same way, making sure that when we stitch over these seams that they remain flat. You might just want to check on the back by lifting up your work as you go that you're sewing those seams nice and flat. So as you can see, nice and flat on both sides. Perfect. Let's keep going. So now we do the same thing where we trim our seam fold along the edge there so that we can press it flat open so we get a nice flat piece to work with when we sew our bag together. So now we've done that on both our pieces, we can go and take it to the iron and iron the seams flat as you did before. So we just take our piece of patchwork and we place the zipper with the end about 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch from the edge there and measure across, and we put a little marking on our zipper about 1 centimeter in. I've got a piece of square here that I'm going to stitch onto the zipper across there like that so that we get a nice finish on the edge of the zipper. So we're just going to stitch that across. Just for security, we might stitch it at the other end. So across the zipper, and then that'll give a nice finish to the end of the zipper. So now we're going to replace our zipper foot, which looks like this. And we're just going to press this button at the back here and just putting the bar on the left side, we're going to hook that up, press the button and lift up the foot. There we go. Place that in. The zipper foot has 2 places to hook onto, one on the left and one on the right. We're going to hook the zipper foot to the left side. So we're going to take the zipper that we've prepared and trim off the pieces of fabric like so to the edge of the zipper. And then we're going to undo the zipper about halfway and pin the zipper face side down with the metal tooth about 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch from the edge and place a pin. Oops, not into my finger. And then another pin about halfway down. And then another pin right at the end. And then we're going to stitch a seam down about 5 millimeters from the edge down the zipper. Put the threads to the back, so about a 5 millimeter seam or 1/4 of an inch. Little back tack. Take out the pin and start sewing. And when we get to the head of the zipper, we'll stop and I'll show you what to do. We get to the head of the zipper, we undo the pin and we lift up the zipper foot and push the zipper down towards the end, just out of the way so we're not sewing over it, and keep doing the seam. And now we're ready to sew the other piece to the zipper. So you work out what's your top and what's your bottom, which I think is this way round. And I'm just going to put the right side of the zipper with the right side of the fabric together. So right sides together, turn it over and pin the fabric to the zipper in the same way. With the metal tooth about 5 millimeters from the edge. We're just going to pin that in, and then one in the middle, and then one at the end. And this time we're going to start at the end of the zipper so that we're sewing with the zipper up the top of our piece. So keeping the zipper foot on the side, we're just going to do a 5 millimeter seam allowance and back stitch. Take the pin out and sew down to where the head of the zipper is, doing a 5 millimeter seam. And once we approach the zipper, we need to lift it up, push the zipper down to the end so that we're free of the zipper head, and then stitch the rest of the seam. Pull the pin out, stitch to the end. So now we're going to attach the lining of the zipper pouch. And the way we do this is we flatten out the zippered piece and then put face down, because this is going to be what you see on the inside, so it's no longer the back because it's the inside of the bag. We put the zipper and the bag pieces like so, and we attach the lining to the wrong side of the zipper face down. So the wrong side of the fabric is facing out, and we put the wrong side of the zipper and the right side of the fabric faces together, so that when we turn it out, the lining will be facing the right way. So we just stitch that as we've stitched the other pieces along with a 5mm seam. So we just line it up with the sewing machine and the zipper, undo the zipper to halfway like we have before, and the zipper is just on that side. We're going to make a 5mm seam, back tack, pull out the pin and stitch. When you get to the zipper head, you lift up the zipper foot and slide the zipper head down so that you don't stitch near where the zipper head is, and then you continue sewing through all the thicknesses, so you've got your cover fabric, the zipper and the lining. And then we flip that open and we take the other side of the zipper and place the zipper face down and pin the fabric face down to the other side of the zipper, lining up the pieces of fabric with all three thicknesses of the fabric in your seams. Then we stitch along this line here with the right side of the lining to the right side of the lining that we've just sewn. So now we have everything stitched together and nice and flat. I've pressed that flat so that it stays where it is, and then we put the lining pieces together and we flip it over like this, and we put everything together like so, pressing the zipper. We have to move the zipper head down a little bit, and then we put the right sides of the lining together with the right sides of the outside together, with the zipper put together like so, and we just pin the zipper together like that. So we just put a pin through there, stitching the zipper together like that, and then we go around. Actually, now that we've done the thing, we can actually snip that part of the zipper off, and we put the zipper bag together like that. So we're going to sew over those teeth, sew them together. So we're just pinning the zipper. It's a bit tricky, but we're just pinning the zipper in place like so, and then we're stitching the layers of the lining together, and we're going to leave an opening from here to here, roughly, just a little opening so that we can turn the bag out in the end. And you can see that this here has become a little bit misaligned. We can just trim that off after we've finished pinning, but don't worry about that too much. The layers always go a little bit wonky as we're stitching, so just pin as best you can. You haven't made a mistake, it's just the way that the bag comes together. Sometimes things slip. So we've pinned all that down. So we're just going to stitch 3 sides of the bag. So down the sides, along the bottom of the outside of the bag, and then along the other side, leaving this open to turn out our work when we're finished. So we're just going to stitch along the line, going very slowly, being careful to remove the pins as you go. And as we approach the zipper, you just need to be really careful. We can pull out the pin now, but just be really careful sewing through all those layers, because we're sewing through the teeth of the zipper as well. And we just want to get everything nice and aligned. So just go very slowly. There we go. That's caught all the thicknesses of the zipper and the fabric. And we just keep going to the edge. And on this edge, we sew about a 5mm seam. And you can see as we turn out, we've caught that piece of the fabric. So here we do 5mm seam along the bottom of the outside of the bag with the faces together. And on this side, we're going to continue with a 5mm seam because we don't have the same mismatch with the fabric. So we're just going to lift up the foot, pivot our work, and continue with stitching along this line of the fabric, and slow down as you get to the zipper, because we're going to take this pin out and hold it down with our fingers and sew over the top of the zipper very slowly. And then keep sewing, taking the pins out as we go down to the bottom of the lining. Doing a back tack when we get to the bottom through those thicknesses. Oops, bunched up a little bit there, that wasn't very good. That's okay, we can just flatten that out. See how it's bunched up there a little bit? That's okay. And now we're ready to finish the bag. So we've got our pieces all stitched together. We're just going to quickly snip off the corners, being careful not to snip the stitching, so that when you turn it the right side out, there's no bunching. And then we're going to turn the bag out the right way round with the zipper open. Still got some loose threads there, but that's okay. So we're turning it out the right way round and undo the zip. And as you can see, we've got this really neatly finished over here with our little piece that we put onto the zipper head at the other end. Undo the zipper the full way, pull the lining out, and we're just going to finger press along this line a 5mm seam. So just finger press that with your nail and your finger, like so. Make a little 5mm seam by turning that in, and then we pin that in place like so. And on the other end as well, pin that in place on the corner. And then we'll put 1 or 2 pins in the middle. See how the finger pressing just holds that together, and so it folds quite neatly. We'll put a seam in the middle, and then we're just going to stitch along this edge here on the top of the fabric. And we'll make about a 2mm seam along the top of that there to close off the bag edge. So we've sewn that now, and then we're going to turn it to the right side out with a sharp object, maybe the end of your scissors, to push out. Try with your fingers first, and then to push out the points of the corner, you just need to get a sharp object that's not going to go right through. Chopstick is good, or the end of your scissors. And then if that doesn't work, you can get a pin and just pull out, ease the fabric out into the corner like so. And the same here, ease the fabric out into the corner, just gently without fraying the fabric. And there you've got a nice corner. And just fit the bag lining into the corner, and then we're done.
Well, you did it. Zippers conquered. Take a moment to really celebrate this, because you've just tackled one of the most feared skills in sewing and come out the other side with confidence. Not only have you created a beautiful zippered pouch, but you've also reached the end of the Be Made section of the course. What an incredible milestone. From your very first stitches to this polished practical piece, look how far you've come. You should feel so proud of yourself. And the best part, this is just the beginning. There are so many more projects and possibilities waiting for you. Keep sewing, keep experimenting, and keep enjoying every moment of your creative journey.